Hi, this is Suzanne from Monster Tale by Tunes Design, the makers of Rainbow Loom. Today I'll be showing you how to make the Loch Ness bracelet. This is an 8-pin, 3-color reversible design. To make a standard 7-inch bracelet, you will need about 150 bands, or approximately 21 bands per inch. You also need a Monster Tale loom, a Rainbow Loom hook, and a C-clip. Choose your bands and pick out your color scheme. You will need about 90 A colored bands, 30 B colored bands, and 30 C colored bands. In this video, I will be using gray, blue, and turquoise. Organize your bands into 3 piles, A, B, and C, as I have done here. Pause the video here until you're ready to follow along. Now, let's get started. Position the loom so that the red mark is on the left side. The first step in making this bracelet will be placing 3 A-colored starter bands twisted into a figure 8 vertically between the 3 middle pins. Next, stretch 2 B-colored bands lengthwise across the loom. And then slide those down. Pull the 3 A-colored bands from the bottom half of the loom to the top half. And then slide all the bands down. Then place 3 A-colored bands vertically between the 3 middle pins again. This time you won't be twisting them. Push those down. Then stretch 2 C-colored rubber bands lengthwise across the loom. And slide those down. Now we're ready to start a 3-step process for looping the bands. The first step is to lift the 3 A-colored bands from the bottom of the loom to the top of the loom. Now turn your loom around. Make sure your bands are all in the right order. You can do that by twisting your hook around the pin. And then you're going to lift the bottom 2 bands on each of these middle pins at the same time, up and over. Push those down. And then on each end of the loom, you'll lift the bottom 2 bands up and over, hold these bands down with your finger, and again on this side. To make this bracelet, a series of 5 bands will be placed on the loom and then looped. This process is repeated until the desired length of the bracelet is reached. I'll show you this process 2 more times. You'll place the 3 A-colored bands vertically across the loom. And then the bands stretched lengthwise across the loom will alternate in color, so this time we'll place 2 B-colored bands. And then we start a 3-step process for looping. We lift these 3 A-colored bands across the loom. Turn our loom around, and then the next step, we lift the bottom 2 bands on each of these pins up and over, And then finally, we lift the bottom 2 bands on each end of the loom. Now let's repeat that process again. We place 3 egg-colored bands vertically across the loom. And this time we'll place sea-colored bands across the length of the loom. Once you've placed those 2 bands, slide them down, and then we start the looping process. We lift these 3 bands to the top of the loom, then turn our loom around, and we'll lift the bottom 2 bands up and over at the same time. Then on each end of the loom, we lift the bottom 2 bands, holding this down with our finger, and lift those over. And then again on this side. Continue this pattern until the desired length of the bracelet is reached. One way to find the correct length of your bracelet is to wrap it around your wrist and then bring the loom around until the top of the pins can reach the end of that bracelet. You may want to pause the video here until you're ready to finish your bracelet. When you have found a place to stop, you will need to follow a few steps to finish this bracelet. To finish the bracelet, place the last 5 bands on the loom using only egg-colored bands. Place the 3 egg-colored vertically across the loom, and then place 2 egg-colored bands across the length of the loom. Lift the bands in the same order. You'll lift these 3 egg-colored bands across the loom, turn your loom around, grab the bottom 2 bands and lift those 2 at a time over each pin. And then on each side, lift the bottom 2 bands up and over, and push down. Now move the 2 bands on each end of the loom to the pin right next door. Grab this band with your hook facing out so that you don't lose control of that band, and then slide it around that pin. Then on this end you do the same. Hold your hook away, lift it up, bring it around, kind of twist this one so that they'll lay flat. Catch it around there and release. Then push all your bands down. Now turn your loom around and you'll lift. Let's straighten these bands up first. You always want to keep them in the same order that you've placed them. There we go. You'll lift the bottom 2 bands on each of these outside pins over 2 at a time. And then you'll move these outside bands to the middle pin. Turn your loom around, face your hook outward, grab those bands, lift it, and place, oops, you have to make sure both bands catch over that middle pin. Push those down, and then do the same on this pin. Holding your hook outward, lift those bands, and put them around the middle pin and push them down. There will be 6 bands on the middle pin. Now we'll lift the bottom two up and over. Now that we're down to the 4 bands on this middle pin, we'll attach a C-clip. You slide that around there. Make sure it's around all 4 bands, and then you can lift it up off the loom. Then on the other end of your bracelet, you'll slide your hook through the A-colored bands at the end. Pull your hook away, slide your finger in, and then you can attach your C-clip in this area. Grab your C-clip and snap it around all 6 bands. Then bring your hook through. And there you have your finished Loch Ness Monster bracelet.